L.A.B. With me, your man, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie Tee aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2018 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series. As you cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples: G-Men, next. Giants, next. Next. Big Blue. You get where I'm going with this. You'll want to be as precise as possible. That's going to give you the chance to be first. So none other than the New York Football Giants are next up in this series, and they've got a new general manager in Dave Gettleman, a guy that I'm not too fond of. But if you read my report of this draft on the website LouieTeeNetwork.net, you'll know that I gave him props for this draft. This was a phenomenal debut as Giants general manager for Dave Gettleman. This was a great offseason for the Giants, one that was well needed. New coach, that needed to happen. New general manager, that needed to happen. Change of culture, that needed to happen. Turnover of the roster, that needed to happen. Brand new offensive line, new running back, new moving parts. This is a different Giants football team. Far cry from the one last year that went 3-13. This team could easily reascend into a playoff team in 2018. It would not shock me in the least. And a huge part of them potentially getting back to the team that in 2016 was an 11-win team and a playoff team is simply this offseason, and this draft is a huge part of what I think is a revamped Giants football team. Really like what Dave Gettleman did here. Very, very precise draft, in and out, got what they needed to get and didn't delay, but it's still a very quality draft on the part of the Giants. Let's jump into it. Of course, we start at the top of this draft. Second overall selection, running back out of Penn State, Saquon Barkley is the selection to get this Giants draft underway. So I'm not going to break down Saquon Barkley's, I'm not going to break him down here, excuse me, as I've already done that on the Louie Tee Network during the Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Saquon Barkley, that's where you'll need to go and check out that entire video. And that goes for any other player that I was able to break down prior to the draft. And so Saquon Barkley is a unique, one-of-a-kind type of running back. I've had discussions with multiple people about, is he better than Ezekiel Elliott when he came out? That's a great discussion to have. I am on the side of Barkley being better than Elliott. There are a lot of people out there that don't think that is the case. I will say that Elliott was a much more straight-ahead forward runner, a guy that if a play is blocked to get 2, Elliott can get you 4. That's not what Saquon Barkley is. If a play is blocked to get 2, he may get you 3, but he's not going to get you 4 or 5 off of sheer power. Barkley's the kind of guy that wants to make people miss. He's the guy that wants to bounce it outside. He wants to take it and turn it into a home run. And so there are going to be some losses, similar to Barry Sanders. And I'm not comparing him to Barry Sanders, but similar to Barry Sanders in the sense that he'll run backwards to try to make a positive gain. And you're going to have to take a 4 or 5 yard loss at times because of what this guy is capable of doing. At times it'll be a 5 yard loss. At times he'll turn what should be a 2 yard loss into a 22 yard gain. That's the kind of skill set that this guy brings to the table. He also offers you versatility. I don't know if the Giants are going to tap into that or not as a kickoff return man, but nonetheless, he can catch it out of the backfield. He can block on third downs. And of course, he's a guy that you can turn around and hand the rock off to. So there is a number of things that you get with this guy on the field and off the field, he is also squeaky clean and a great face of the franchise type of guy. So no wonder the Giants just gave this guy the most money we've ever seen shelled out to a running back in a rookie contract. But that's what this guy is as a football player coming into the league, and that's what the Giants think of him, and for good reason. I think this guy, if the line blocks, and that's a big question mark with this Giants football team, it's a revamped offensive line. If they are able to create space and holes, he will deliver for this Giants organization. Love the selection. Could they have went with Bradley Chubb here to really give them an identity on the defensive side of the football? Sure, they could have. And we'll see how those two in their careers parallel with one another. Hard to compare the two. Obviously, two different positions. It's not like two quarterbacks where you can look at their careers and compare them directly to one another. But we'll definitely be looking at what Chubb does out in Denver, and we'll be looking at what Saquon Barkley does in the Big Apple, and we'll compare the two and see if the Giants made the right decision. Love this selection. Love what he brings to the table, and if they're able to create space, he will deliver for this Giants organization in the first round, second overall pick. Running back out of Penn State, Saquon Barkley is, you already know.
Hits one high. Hits it deep. It is out of here.
As we move right along to the second round, 34th overall selection, offensive lineman out of UTEP, Will Hernandez is the selection. So Will Hernandez is interesting for me because I'm one of those guys that a lot of times I have no idea what I'm getting myself into when I turn on the film. When I sit down to watch a player, all I know is what I've been told. And a lot of times I try to just push that aside. I go in with no preconceived notions. I don't want to go in looking for certain things. I go in with a clean slate. Some people want to go in looking for certain things. I'm one of those people that I don't want to go in looking for certain things. I want to see what it is that you can do, and then we'll go from there. And so it was so hard with Will Hernandez because all pre-draft process long, I heard about how this guy was just he was tossing guys out of the bar. And he was just a massive, massive mover in the run game. And he was a guy that was just going to be a load to deal with at the next level because of his physicality and his brute strength. And so I went in thinking that I'm going to be wowed by what I saw out of Will Hernandez. And at times I was. But this was one of those cases where the hype didn't necessarily live up to what I saw on tape. Not to say that Will Hernandez wasn't good. He was damn good. It's just that I think I put him into a different category, in a different stratosphere, and he didn't need to be there. And it was because of all the things that I heard. Remember, at one point, Will Hernandez was looked at as a guy that could go in the top 15. There were teams that needed interior offensive line help, that people that were doing mock drafts were inserting Will Hernandez in the top 15 of the draft. Yes, Will Hernandez. And I think he landed where he was supposed to in the second round. I think that's great value for what this guy is. And so, again, not to diminish what Will Hernandez was on tape. Again, I think I just went in thinking I was getting Quentin Nelson 2.0, and I got Will Hernandez. And that's okay. That's fine because Will Hernandez is a damn good football player. 6'2", 327 out of UTEP, 32-inch arms, 5'1", 540. 37 reps of 2 1/4 and 49 career starts, all at left guard. Never missed a game in his collegiate career. So right there off the bat, me reading you his measurables, that tells you a little something about this guy's build. He's got short arms, squatty frame, but it's powerfully built. So not the greatest measurables known to mankind. Obviously, shorter arms with 32-inch arms. Obviously, only 6'2", but like I said, powerfully built. 37 reps of 2 1/4 tells you that this guy is physical up top. He's also got a very powerful lower body, and so this is a guy that definitely creates space in the run game. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Athleticism, he's limited as an athlete. However, he does have some sweet feet. And honestly, as an offensive lineman, especially interior guys, the interior offensive lineman from guard to guard, you really don't have to be the greatest athlete in the world. It helps if you are, especially depending on what system you're in. If you're in a Kyle Shanahan offense, then you want the interior offensive lineman to be very athletic, uber athletic, and somewhat undersized if need be. You'll sacrifice size for a little bit of athleticism. In the case of a team looking to have a power run scheme, you're not looking to sacrifice athleticism or size for athleticism. Okay, you're not looking to give that up. So this is a guy that if you've got good feet as an interior offensive lineman, you can get away with not having the greatest athleticism. If you got good feet, if you know how to, if you know angles, if you know what you need to do to be able to execute a block, if you know your weaknesses and you know what you have to do to be able to execute a block, if you can do all of those things, you'll be just fine. Will Hernandez is one of those guys that knows what he has to do. Technique, really good hand placement. His hands are generally inside the pads, and he's not a guy that's grabby hands outside the pads with a bunch of cloth. He's a guy with good hand placement. I watched him bottle up a defender for Oklahoma who got extremely frustrated because he couldn't move. Will Hernandez got up under his pads and locked him up. And he was trying to chop his hands off, and Will Hernandez wasn't moving. He wasn't budging, and he got so upset, he hit him in the face. Got a 15-yard penalty. So his hand placement is excellent. He's got really good feet, as I mentioned before, so his technique is really sound. Anchor, length can be a problem for him. I was watching him versus Texas in 2016, and look, the guy literally just won with pure length. All you saw was Will Hernandez's back just bow like this, and a guy just driving back about a good 2 yards. Hernandez was ultimately able to salvage the rep and stick his feet in the ground and dig in and not give any more ground. But those initial 2 yards, he was going back very quickly, and it was just due to length. And after that length ran its course, Hernandez was able to take control of that rep and dig in and not give any more ground and allow this guy to collapse the pocket. So overall, bull rushes don't faze him. He's got really good anchor, but length can be a problem for him at the next level if he goes against a guy that knows how to use his length. Balance, he likes to throw guys down, but when he falls, sometimes he tries to take them down with him. And in this league, I can't tell you how often I see guys with good, clean blocks where guys go down, and just because the referee doesn't see the entire block, they just see a guy go down, and then they see the offensive lineman go down with him, they automatically assume it was a holding penalty. I could see Will Hernandez being the victim of that a couple of times, where you go back and watch the replay and you're saying, that's a clean block. He didn't do anything wrong. Guy goes down, Hernandez goes down with him, and all of a sudden it's a holding penalty. There are times where Hernandez may go down himself, and he does pull the guy down, and that is a holding penalty, but I can see him being a victim of some situations where he tosses a guy to the ground, referee doesn't see all of the play, and all of a sudden it's a holding penalty when it shouldn't be. Redirect is solid, not great. His toughness is off the charts. You play every single collegiate game of your career, you're a tough SOB. Pass blocking ability, he's solid in pass pro. I think his run blocking is light years ahead of his pass blocking, and that's no knock on his pass blocking. I just think he's that much better as a run blocker than he is a pass protector. He shines as a run blocker. That's what I put in my notes. He's the guy that will create space in the run game. I watched him create space for a touchdown run versus Texas. I watched him create space for a touchdown run versus Oklahoma. I watched this guy create space time and time again in the run game, seal off defenders. At times, this guy can be a monster in the run game, creating a brand new line of scrimmage depending on how he's utilized on a particular play, especially when he pulls. It takes him a while to get there, and we'll get to that here in a second, so I'll save that for when we get there. His finish, he's got a nasty disposition. He's one of those guys that would love to throw you on your neck and then jump on top of you. He's not satisfied with just a pancake. He wants syrup on top, and he wants a little piece of butter as well. So he definitely is a guy that's looking to finish plays for sure. The first play I watched him on, he dumped a guy down on his neck and then just plopped right on top of him. And I said, talk about adding insult to injury. That's the true definition of adding insult to injury, when you dump a guy on his head and then turn around and just plop 330 pounds on top of him just to let him know, yeah, I did that, and you're not getting back into this play even if you want to. Moving right along, though, awareness, spatial awareness, both are solid. Looking for work, I think he could do a better job in this department looking for work. There are a couple of times where he's just here with both hands out, looking around, and I'm like, all right, you've already surveyed the landscape. There's no late delayed blitzer coming. Go get somebody. Go be a part of the play. Go help out your tackle. Go help out your center. Go do something of note on this play, and he just refused to do so. So I'd like to see him go and be more aggressive when there's no one for him to block on a particular play. Go be of assistance to somebody. Go help. Double teams, he's really good on the double team. He's good at washing down guys and those down blocks where he just crushes someone and just gives up 2 or 3 yards of space for the running back to just easily stroll through a hole. But he's equally as good at that double team and then getting to the second level and getting that scoop block. So he's the guy that is definitely adept at getting to the second level after the double team. So he's good on the double team for sure. Pulling, I put this in my notes, slow on the pull, okay? Remember, I told you he's limited as an athlete, okay? He won't wow you with his ability to move in space. But once he makes contact, look out, okay? There's a game, I was watching him versus Middle Tennessee State, and I call this a double whammy, 2-for-1 special. So they pull him to the right because he's the left guard. They pull him to the right, and there's a hole, and he meets the linebacker in the hole, and he makes massive contact. It's like a car crash. Bop! And that linebacker goes back about 1.5 yards, and there's a safety coming down to fill. And the impact that Will Hernandez made with the linebacker was so devastating that it moved the linebacker back so far, he crashed into the safety and knocked both of them down on that play. And all of a sudden, the running back's like, whoa, what the hell just happened? I got a big hole here. I'll take it. And he was off to the races. And that's what Will Hernandez does. When you give him that kind of running start, look the hell out. If you're a linebacker, you want no parts of the action that's coming your way. You don't want that kind of work. And so I can see a lot of guys getting the hell out of that express train that is Will Hernandez at the next level if he's called upon to pull and able to get a straight line shot at someone. I wouldn't mind. I would not be upset at a guy making a business decision in that situation where he just kind of goes, ole, and kind of goes around that block and makes it easy for the running back to just run right up a hole. I get it, man. I understand. So I thought he was outstanding as a puller. Once he was able to get there, again, he's very, very slow to get there, however. If you've got the patience to set it up on like a counter where you give him time to get there, magic will happen. Availability. Guy never missed a collegiate game, so that is also something the Giants have struggled with, whether it was Justin Pugh or someone else on that offensive line that they've finally gotten rid of. They've had some issues with guys staying healthy, and so here's a guy in Will Hernandez that just simply doesn't get hurt. So that's Will Hernandez in a nutshell. The Giants have made a bunch of moves this offseason, a couple on the interior of the offensive line. But Will Hernandez is an upgrade over the guys that were there previously that have moved on to greener pastures. And he's an upgrade over the guys you've signed in the offseason. So there's no doubt in my mind you're going to put him right next to Nate Solder, who you just signed as a free agent acquisition. And you're hoping that that left side of the offensive line is now a strength. I've got my questions and my doubts about Nate Solder and what he is as a left tackle. But I don't have any doubts about what Will Hernandez is as a left guard. And so I know where the Giants are going to try to run the football. We'll see if they have success or not. But one thing's for sure, Will Hernandez will do his part to try to open up holes for the number 1 pick of this draft for the Giants in Saquon Barkley. 2nd round, 34th overall selection, offensive lineman out of UTEP, Will Hernandez, for me, is. Third round, 66th overall selection, linebacker out of Georgia, Lorenzo Carter is the pick. Taking Saquon Barkley out of the mix because it's not fair. This is my favorite pick of this draft. This is the guy that I'm most excited to see play at the next level because the talent here is undeniable. Like, there's question marks surrounding Lorenzo Carter, and there is probably some validity to that. This guy was the number 2 recruit in the nation coming out of high school. And he didn't live up to that billing while at Georgia. He started trending in that direction towards the end of his Georgia career. But for the first couple of seasons on campus in Athens, he wasn't what they thought they were getting when they got the number 2 recruit in all of the country. They got this guy who's from Norcross, Georgia, to stay in the state of Georgia, and they were ecstatic. And it didn't seem like he was what they thought they were getting. And they got a lot out of this guy towards the end of that junior season, and really he started to explode and play his best brand of football in his senior year. And I think the sky's the limit for this guy. There are some questions that people have. Does he love football? Or is he motivated? I don't know how much stock to put into that. I can just tell you what I saw on tape, and this guy's a problem. Straight up and down, no other way to say it. This guy has the potential to be a big-time problem in the NFC East for many years to come. 6'5", 250, out of Georgia, 34-inch arms, 4.5 flat in the 40, 36-inch vert, 10.8 broad. Right there, the guy is dripping and oozing with athleticism and freaky length. Pause. The guy is exceptional from just the raw measurables and athleticism standpoint. You get to his career numbers. Again, these were a little underwhelming for a guy that was the second rated recruit in the nation coming out of high school. 13.5 sacks, 19.5 tackles for a loss, 7 forced fumbles. Now, that is a stupid number, 3 of which came in 2017. I got to watch 2 of them in one game. And a block kick, and that one block kick might have been the most important play of this guy's career. Blocked a field goal in overtime versus Oklahoma in that epic Rose Bowl showdown between Oklahoma and Georgia. He was the one that blocked the field goal in the second overtime that put Georgia in the driver's seat to where they just needed to score. They ultimately scored a touchdown and went on to the national championship game versus Alabama. But this guy affects the game in a multitude of ways when he is mentally engaged. And I have no reason to believe that he's not going to be, but again, he wasn't for his entire career. So that sparks a question with people. Does this guy love the game of football, and are you going to get the most out of him at all times? I can only tell you what I saw on tape. And what I saw was a guy that has the potential to be a dominant force at the next level. Measurables. I already told you. Ridiculous length and athleticism. So those two things, measurables and athleticism, right now we don't need to talk about it. He's got it. I just told you the guy's 6'5", 250 and runs a 4.5 40 with 34-inch arms. Stupid, okay? Dumb. So speed is not something that you need to question with him. It's in spades. Acceleration, he can open up and run. And I think the best... And first of all, let me tell you this. Anytime I watch a player and they dominate a game to the point where I'm just wowed, I'm in awe, I always reference you to that game. So for Lorenzo Carter, if you want to see what Lorenzo Carter is as a football player, you want to see him dominating the run game, stack and shed defenders or offensive linemen, make a tackle. You want to see this guy blow up plays. You want to see this guy force fumbles, wreak havoc, okay? Turn on the Notre Dame game from 2017. He was a one-man wrecking crew in that game. Notre Dame had no answer, could not block this man, okay? You want to see forced 2 fumbles in that game. Recovered 2 fumbles in that game. Go watch 2017 Georgia Notre Dame. If you want to see Lorenzo Carter in all of his splendor, that is the game that will show you, if you're a Giants fan, what you are going to get with this young man if he is mentally engaged. There's a hit versus Notre Dame quarterback Brandon Wimbush on a wide receiver screen. He was unblocked. What do I need to block him for? It's a wide receiver screen. The center hikes the ball to me. I grab the laces and I throw the football to the wide receiver. It takes a fraction of a second. We don't need to block this guy on the edge. Oh, you don't? Lorenzo Carter comes screaming off the edge. Wimbush barely gets the football away before he gets drilled. That's not supposed to happen on a wide receiver screen when the quarterback is getting rid of the football almost simultaneously with the snap. So it's crazy. But that's the kind of acceleration that this guy has, which also speaks to his range. He's got sideline to sideline range. He can get from point A to point B in a hurry. And so that's something else that this guy brings to the table. Redirect and awareness are also great. He is one of those guys that will get his hands in the passing lanes if need be. I like his awareness in zone coverage as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Shed and slipping blocks. Let's talk about him taking on blocks and shedding blocks, because these two go hand in hand when talking about Lorenzo Carter. He takes on blocks with his length. He does a great job of utilizing that 6'5" frame with those 34-inch arms. And what he does is he keeps that offensive lineman or that tight end at bay. A lot of times it's a tight end because he's out on the edge. And he'll take that guy, he'll bench press him, keep him at arm's length. And when that ball carrier comes, and I thought there were some great plays and some great instances of how you play the run. So I'll give you an example. Versus Notre Dame, it's a play that's going off tackle. The running back wants to get to the outside, and Lorenzo Carter realizes that. So what does he do? He over-aggressively jumps to the outside to spill the run back inside to his help. What that effectively does is it forces the running back to stick his foot in the ground and cut it up the field. Immediately upon that running back making a decisive cut up the field, Lorenzo Carter then jumps back inside, throws down the tight end, dives at the running back, and makes a tackle for no gain. That is how it's done, okay? He did that on multiple occasions in that football game. He was an absolute menace in that football game, and like I said, damn near unblockable for the entire duration of that football game versus Notre Dame. So his ability to shed blockers, to stack and shed, sometimes is uncanny. He doesn't do it all the time, but when he has an opportunity to do so, he does in fact do it, and he generally makes the tackle as well. So I just love what he brings to the table from that standpoint. Tackling ability, he's adept at wrapping up ball carrier, and then this is the extra added benefit of having extreme length and knowing how to use it. He then uses his length to reach into the cookie jar for the football. Did it against Notre Dame. When you've got longer arms, you cover up more of the ball carrier, so you're allowed to get creative with the off arm. And so he'll jump in, he grabbed the running back, had him by his waist, and then reached in the cookie jar, and as he was going down, he yanked it in with that lawnmower yanking of the chain, and ball came out. And so that's what he brings to the table. A guy that is long and has the ability to wrap you up and then still go after the football as he's trying to take you down to the turf. Man coverage ability. I watched him against Oklahoma hold his own in man-to-man situations versus Mark Andrews. Andrews was able to win some of those battles, but I thought Lorenzo Carter had some solid coverage. He's a guy that's long, he's athletic, and so in some man-to-man situations, he's going to be able to survive. Even if he's not in great position, he's going to be able to survive with just the athleticism and the length he brings to the table. But I think he's better in zone coverage. He does a good job of keying quarterbacks' eyes and gets good depth on his drops and eats up a ton of space while doing so. He's a guy that gets really good depth, but he's so long and he's so active, and he's doing such a good job of keying quarterbacks' eyes that he's able to kind of go where the quarterback's eyes are going and create a little bit of doubt in the mind of the quarterback as to whether I want to try and fit it into a tight window over there with this guy lurking. And so I think he does a really good job in some zone coverage drops. Blitzing capabilities, I love him as a blitzer. He's a devastating blitzer when given an opportunity to rush. You look at him in that Notre Dame game, and like I said, he was unblockable. Had a sack, strip, forced fumble, recovery in that game where he just came screaming off the edge, knocked down and defeated the hands of the tackle, beat him around the edge with length, and then just, like I said, guys don't understand how to finish beating a guy at the collegiate level a lot of times. Well, he defeated that tackle with his hands, knocked him down violently so that he couldn't try to get back into the play and push him around the pocket, and then he was able to take a couple more steps, dive, use that length to not only get to Brandon Wimbush, but also dislodge the football in one smooth motion. Like I said, he was an animal in that football game, and man, was that fun to watch. This guy, I think, has the potential, and again, you've got to question, where was this in your freshman, in your sophomore, in parts of your junior year? Where was this? This wasn't always here. So that's a question that people have for Lorenzo Carter. But if he's trending in the right direction, which by all accounts, looking at the final portion of his junior season and into his senior year, if he's trending in the right direction and he's going to continue on this upward movement in terms of the trajectory of his career, the Giants have the potential to be getting a guy that is a difference maker for years to come. I love what this guy brings to the table. This is an outstanding pickup for the Giants here in the third round. I think this is tremendous value for a guy that I look at and I say, wow, this is pretty damn impressive. Third round, 66th overall selection. Linebacker out of Georgia, Lorenzo Carter for me is. So we stay in the third round, 3 picks down the road, 69th overall. Defensive lineman out of NC State, B.J. Hill is the selection. So much like Lorenzo Carter, a guy that played on an uber talented defense, or more specifically an uber talented defensive line, where every single one of the defensive linemen for NC State was drafted in the 2018 NFL draft. So that just goes to show you just how talented that group was up front, Hill being one of those guys. And much like Lorenzo Carter, there is a game where he was a standout that if you want to see what B.J. Hill is as a football player at his best, you just turn that game on and you'll really get a sense of what you're going to get. That game for B.J. Hill is against Boston College in 2017. He was dominant in that football game at times, flashed the quickness that is what you expect from an ex-high school running back, and showed the ability to be disruptive at the line of scrimmage. You don't end up with 25 tackles for loss throughout your career from the nose tackle or defensive tackle position without having some quickness and some ability to be disruptive on the other side of the line of scrimmage. And you got to see that on full display versus BC in 2017. 6'3", 311 stands B.J. Hill, 33-inch arms, 4'9", 40. So again, that's the athleticism that this guy brings to the table from a 310-pound frame. 35 reps of 2 1/4. So you're getting a guy that is extremely strong. And where that strength comes into play is his ability to stand up to double teams. This guy eats up space. This guy eats up blockers. He's going to allow your linebackers to roam free and make plays. And when he gets an opportunity, he'll look to make plays himself. As I mentioned before, ex-running back in high school and an ex-defensive end. So this guy put on weight once he got to NC State because he was a lot more slender. Again, when you're an ex-running back, most running backs aren't 275 pounds. So he was probably a lot smaller, probably more so around 240 or something in high school, and then got to NC State and just packed on the pounds and became a force up front as a defensive tackle. 9 career sacks, 25 career tackles for loss, 10 PBUs, so that means the guy's getting his hands up in the passing lane. And I can't tell you how many times in the games that I watched him in that he got his hands up and deflected a pass. And that's just as good as an incompletion. Well, it's not just, it is an incompletion. That's just as good as a defensive back knocking a pass away. It's the same exact thing, but you don't even put your D-backs in a position to have to make a play when you get your hands up in the passing lane. 2 forced fumbles and also 2 block kicks. So he does a little bit of everything, and you'll take that. You want guys that can give you some of everything, and that's what B.J. Hill is going to be able to provide for you. Measurables at 6'3", 310, essentially, with 33-inch arms. He's got really good size for the position, and he's a good athlete, as I mentioned before. Ex-running back, you kind of see some of that quickness with him when he's able to knife up the field and get into the backfield and make a play on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. That's where you see the athleticism on full display. Hand usage, he does use his hands at times. I'd like to see him be a little bit more violent with his hands, but he does use his hands at times to help him win. A lot of times it's not with violence. It's more of the finesse variety where he's looking to win with a swim move or something quick off the snap. Awareness, again, in order to have 10 pass breakups in your career, you've got to be aware. I'm not getting to the quarterback. Might as well get my hands up. He is one of those guys that is very aware and knows I'm not getting there. I'm not going to hit home. Might as well put my hands up and see if I can't impact this play in another way. So he's definitely aware there. Point of attack physicality, like I told you at the top of his breakdown, he's a guy that will take on double teams and not afraid to do so, not afraid to eat up blockers, eat up space, and just be a guy that allows others to make plays. It's not always about you as a defensive tackle. Sometimes you have to go and do for the greater good of the defense, and he's a guy that is willing to sacrifice at times. Ability versus the run, extremely solid. Holds his ground in the run game and can play on the opposite line of the line of scrimmage if given an opportunity to do so. Tackling ability, really solid. Motor and endurance, also extremely solid. Impact on the game, again, when you're a defensive lineman, especially interior defensive lineman, sometimes your impact on the game can't be measured by just stats. When you're taking on double teams and allowing others to make plays, that doesn't go in the stat sheet, but there's a respect level that comes with a guy that is willing to put his stats aside, put his ego aside, and do for the greater good of the defense. B.J. Hill is one of those guys, but still, when given an opportunity in a singled up matchup like he did against Boston College, granted, that was a freshman offensive lineman that he was abusing in that game. I don't give a damn if they put a freshman against you, then you baptize that freshman and welcome him to college football. That's what B.J. Hill did. And so he's one of those guys that if he gets an inferior offensive lineman in front of him one-on-one, he's going to win that matchup and do what he's supposed to do. So his impact on the game is very profound, from taking on blockers, standing his ground in the run game, getting his hands up in the passing lanes and getting deflections, and also just being a guy that's a nuisance around the line of scrimmage. And he can block kicks too. So there's an added benefit there as a guy that can impact the game. Then you go to his cons. Redirect, he's not a guy that's going to change directions, all that great, 310 pounds. So that's not uncommon for a guy his size. Pass rushing ability, I was not all that impressed with him as a pass rusher. As a matter of fact, that's probably the least of his traits right now. He's just not a guy that's going to get you a ton of sacks. He had 9 in his career, but on the games that I was able to watch over the last 2 years, I didn't see a guy that was going to get many opportunities to sack the quarterback unless other guys are creating havoc and he's able to clean it up. And that's generally how his sacks come. Other guys off the edge force the quarterback to step up. Quarterback's kind of flustered, fighting to stay alive on a play, running around trying to escape the pocket, find a backdoor exit. Here comes B.J. Hill to clean him up and get the sack. That's generally how he gets his. He's not going to win right off the snap and get in the backfield. He may do that once or twice a season, but generally speaking, that's not something you should expect from B.J. Hill. But other than that, quality pickup here by the Giants as they look to fortify their defensive line. That's always been a specialty of Dave Gettleman. He loves to build from within. He wants to make sure the offensive and defensive lines are intact, and then he'll start to fan out and attack other positions. He did that in this draft, going and getting Will Hernandez. He did some of that in offseason and free agency by going out and getting Nate Solder, among other guys on the offensive line. And then you'll see in this draft a couple of defensive interior defensive linemen that he picked up as he's looking to try to change the culture in New York. Third round, 69th overall selection, a defensive lineman out of NC State. BJ Hill for me is So the Giants threw us a little bit of a curveball in the supplemental draft. We didn't see this coming initially. The Giants weren't one of the teams that was hot and heavy on the case and on the trail of one Samuel Beal, but they were the ones that pulled the trigger in the third round to acquire the Western Michigan cornerback. I think that's a hell of a get. So we're going to add him into this draft class now as he's a member of this Giants 2018 draft class, and he's a third round selection. So we'll slide him in here. And in the third round, supplemental draft pick out of Western Michigan, Sam Beal is the selection. So I've already broken down Sam Beal. I'm not going to do that here. If you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Sam Beal, once again, go to the Louie Tee Network on YouTube. Check out the Draft Prospects 101 series, and there you'll find the breakdown for Samuel Beal. That being said, this is a hell of a pickup, man. And the Giants' secondary was dysfunctional last year. A lot of guys unhappy with their roles. A lot of guys unhappy with the way the season was going. This is a breath of fresh air. This is a guy with no character flaws. This is a guy that is extremely long, guy that is extremely athletic, brings everything you're looking for to the table in a modern day cornerback. Length, size, speed. He's going to have to put on a little bit of weight at $190, but this guy has everything you're looking for, has ball skills, looks back for the football. I was uber impressed with what he brought to the table. Only thing I didn't care for with him was his ability to tackle. At times, he shined as a tackler like he did against Eastern Michigan. And there were other games where I said, what the hell was that, Sam? That was piss poor, pathetic. But nonetheless, you got yourself a gem here. And kudos to the Giants and their general manager. And I don't give him much praise at all because I'm not a huge fan of his practices. But Dave Gettleman gets another tip of the cap from me for making this move. This is a hell of a football player, and to only have to spend a third-round pick. Had they waited until next year, let's say Sam Beal comes out in this year's draft, it wouldn't shock me if he wasn't a second-round pick. If Sam Beal comes out next year in the draft, let's say he ends up not being academically ineligible because he wasn't ruled out of college football this year. He wasn't ruled academically ineligible just yet, but he didn't want to stay and wait around to see if that was going to end up being the ruling or not. So he just went into the supplemental draft. Let's say he was able to get cleared by the NCAA and he played at the same level he played at last year. This guy was going to be a first or second round pick for sure. You get him in the third round. Feel good about this selection if you're the Giants. Here in the third round, supplemental draft pick. Now you have no third-round pick in next year's draft. Doesn't matter. You're getting a guy that probably had second-round value. This is what I think of this selection for the Giants. As we get back to the Giants in the 2018 NFL Draft, fourth round, 108th overall selection, quarterback out of Richmond, Kyle Lauletta is the selection. So here's the tricky thing when you get a new organization coming in and new personnel. When you get a new general manager, you get a new head coach, you don't know where guys that came from the old administration stand. So case in point, great example here. Davis Webb. What do they think of Davis Webb? Did Dave Gettleman like Davis Webb coming out of Cal last year? Maybe he didn't. Maybe he thought Davis Webb was an erratic, Jay Cutler-esque type quarterback that when given a chance in the league will turn it over a bunch. Big arm, really talented, but doesn't have the mental makeup to be a starting NFL quarterback. Maybe that was his evaluation of Davis Webb. Maybe he doesn't like Davis Webb. Maybe Pat Shurmur doesn't like Davis Webb. We don't know. Maybe they do. All I know is Eli Manning doesn't have much football left, and they understand that. But to draft a guy in the 4th round in Kyle Lauletta, that tells me something. Either they're only on the hook for one more year of Eli Manning, or they're not a huge fan of Davis Webb. Either way, Kyle Lauletta is the selection here. Let's talk about him. 6'3", 222, out of Richmond with the Spiders. He was a team captain. Do not dismiss that. I always like to make mention of guys who are team captains because that is something that you're looking for and you add in as extra value when evaluating these prospects. 4'8", 140, a little bit of an athlete. He can run, he can move, he's very mobile. And I want to go through his career stats over the years, 2015, 2016, 2017. So 2015, he was a guy that ran it a lot in 2015, 78 carries for 116 yards and 7 touchdowns. Pass-wise, in 2015, 241 completions, 391 attempts for 3,598 yards, 19 touchdowns, 15 INTs. So he was growing into the position, made some mistakes there. Then the next year, you want to see that touchdown number go up, that interception number go down. And that's exactly what happened. 220 completions out of 349 attempts for 3,022 yards. 24 touchdowns, 8 INTs. So that was a very good season and a dramatic uptick in production from a touchdown to interception ratio standpoint. You go from essentially 1-to-1 from touchdown to interception to 3-to-1 touchdown to interception. So that's a good jump in 2016. Then you go to 2017, his final year on campus at Richmond. 281 completions out of 433 yards. So he threw it a bunch more, way more than he did the previous 2 seasons, for 3,737 yards. So his highest output as a passer to go along with the most completions and attempts he's ever had in his career. Also setting a career high in touchdown passes with 28. Interceptions went up just a tad at 12, but solid numbers in a season that was a little disappointing for the Richmond Spiders in 2017. In his career, 73 touchdowns, over 35 INTs for a 2-to-1 ratio, essentially 63% completion percentage. So let's jump into what this guy brings to the table. Measurables at 6'3", 222, really solid size for a quarterback going to the next level. Arm talent is good. Sometimes I think he lacks the ability to push the football down the field. I think a lot of times his deep ball hangs in the air, gives defenders a chance to get back into the play, makes guys have to slow down and wait for it. Hell, even the deep ball he threw to DJ Chark in the Senior Bowl, I felt like Chark had to wait on it a little while, which allowed a defender to try to get an angle, but Chark is so damn fast, he's still able to outrun the angle. But Lauletta's arm talent is solid. It doesn't wow you. He doesn't stack up with some of the top guys in this particular draft from an arm talent standpoint. Athleticism, he's right there in the mix with most of the guys in this draft. His ability to move around in the pocket, escape with his legs, pick up yards that are there, that sort of thing. He's able to do that just fine. Throwing mechanics, he doesn't necessarily throw over the top. It's somewhat of a little side 3/4 delivery type of deal. It's solid. It's nothing to be alarmed about, but he's a solid thrower of the football. Footwork, he generally was in shotgun, the entire time, either the pistol or the shotgun. So footwork under the center is something that he'll have to, work on and get better at. But generally, that's most quarterbacks coming into the league anyhow. So that's no different than most quarterbacks that play primarily in the shotgun or the pistol, and that's what Lauletta did while at Richmond. Pocket awareness, I think he needs to be a little bit more aware of his surroundings in the pocket. There was a sack that he took versus Villanova where he literally stood in the pocket, and for the life of me, I don't understand how some of these guys don't know that the clock is going off internally, you've got to get out of there. The alarm is going off. Someone's coming. You've been in the pocket for 3 seconds now. You've got to go. And he was just posted up as if no one was coming. He should have fumbled. Luckily enough for him, that defender did not go after the rock because he was so ill-prepared in that particular moment to protect the football. Ball was down by his side, had no intentions of covering it up, and had no intentions of getting the hell out of Dodge either. So there are times where he just kind of falls asleep behind the wheel. He's got to be a little bit more decisive in the pocket, okay? First read not there, second read not there. I don't have time to get to my third read. I need to get the hell out of here. Pocket mobility, though, I can say he's one of those guys that will escape if given the opportunity to. If he's got a little crevice and he can jump cut to one side and bounce to another and find a backdoor exit out of the pocket and escape for a gain of 2 or 3, he'll do that. He's also a guy that will run into a sack or two. So, you know, you take the good with the bad with Kyle Lauletta, but he's a guy that does have pocket mobility. Accuracy, short to intermediate, I think it's fine. I think he can deliver the football on time within the rhythm of the play. When it's short to intermediate, especially the intermediate balls, I think he does a really good job of delivering those back shoulder throws where the defender isn't looking, to the outside shoulder, towards the sideline. I think he does a great job of those. So his accuracy, short to intermediate, I think is just fine. Where I think he struggles mightily, and I'll just go ahead because this is his only con, is deep ball accuracy. I told you I'm not in love with that. I watched him versus James Madison airmail about 3 deep ball opportunities that could have resulted in big plays or touchdowns in a game that you lose 20-13. There were opportunities for big plays to happen in that game, and Kyle Lauletta just simply did not connect with his receivers. Even the connection he made with DJ Chark in the Senior Bowl, like I said, wide open, and Chark had to wait on it a little bit. It wasn't in stride where Chark could open up, keep running, and outrun everyone on the football field. He had to wait for the football, catch it, and then re-accelerate. So I'm not a huge fan of Lauletta's deep ball. I think that's something that needs a little bit of work. But nonetheless, it was a cold night in November versus James Madison. In his defense, no excuse. You're going to play cold weather games playing in New York. You need to be able to put that football on the money. I've always said what separates the good from the great at the next level is the ability to hit the deep ball and not miss. You don't get many opportunities in this league to strike it big, deep. When it comes, you cannot afford to miss. Guys that are around and have been around for a long time that we consider among the best in the league generally don't miss when they get those opportunities. The guys that end up being backup quarterbacks or marginal starters at best are the ones that do miss those opportunities. Lauletta seems like a guy that's going to miss those opportunities at times, which will put him in that marginal starter to backup category when it's all said and done. Moxie and poise, he's a very poised guy, takes some shots, stays in the pocket, delivers the football. He's willing to run, put his body on the line, that sort of thing. So he does have moxie and poise, leadership and intangibles and it. Again, all of those things he has. He led his team over the last 3 years while at Richmond. Durability, a guy that was fairly durable while at Richmond for a guy that was one of those dual threat quarterbacks that ran read option and ran a lot of RPOs. He was a guy that ran it quite a bit. I told you he had 78 rushes in 2015 alone, and he continued to run it, but those numbers weren't all that impressive moving forward. Processing speed, I think he processes what he sees fine, gets rid of the football. I thought we got to see that in the Senior Bowl where I just thought he was exceptional. I thought the Senior Bowl is what got him drafted in the 4th round. He had an incredible week of practice, and it translated over to the game. He was the game's MVP. He lit it up in the Senior Bowl. Throw after throw, some incredible tight window throws. Had a throw on the move to the tight end in the end zone for his first touchdown of the game. Had a throw, as I mentioned, to DJ Chark for another touchdown. Had another zip throw into the end zone to Marcel Aitman for his third touchdown of the game. He was outstanding in that Senior Bowl. Made a nice tight window throw over the middle on a seam ball to a tight end. I just thought he was exceptional in the Senior Bowl, and I think that's what got him drafted. That week of practice and the subsequent performance in the game was enough to garner the attention of a team like the Giants and get him drafted in the 4th round. Speaking of something that is a big strength of his, accuracy on the move. Much like Sam Darnold, I think he does his best work on the move. Sam Darnold, to me, isn't a strong passer from the pocket, but you get him outside the pocket and you get him to throw the football there, Sam Darnold will carve you up. Same thing can be said with Kyle Lauletta. You get him outside the pocket, and I think that's where he does some of his best work. You get him outside the pocket, you get him moving. Left side, right side, doesn't matter. He'll square his shoulders, moving to his left, and deliver the football. You get him going to his right, and it's almost stealing at that point for Kyle Lauletta. So love him on the move, throwing the football. Decision-making, not his strongest suit. I watched him in the game versus Villanova throw 1 interception. He should have thrown 3 in that game. There were some forced jobs. They're rushing 3, dropping 8, and he's throwing into triple coverage up the seam to the tight end. It makes no sense. Sometimes you've got to cut your losses, and there's times where I just don't think he thinks that a play is ever over. I've got a shot. I'm going to make something happen, even if it's not there. So I don't love his decision-making at this point. And generally, decision-making isn't something that gets better. You either make smart decisions with the football or you don't. You can coach a guy to be a little bit more careful in certain situations, but guys are going to do what they do. And if I'm a gunslinger and I think I can fit it into a tight window, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to try to fit it into that tight window. And despite throwing interceptions, I'm going to continue to be who I am, and that's just who Kyle Lauletta, I think, is. So with that being said, he's a solid prospect, not one that's going to knock your socks off, doesn't knock mine off, but he's solid. And I can tell you this much, over the life of Eli Manning's career, you haven't had one viable backup, not a single one. All of them have been hot garbage. Kyle Lauletta's better than every single one of those guys. And fortunately for you guys, you haven't had to tap into a Jared Lorenzen, the hefty lefty, or the Syracuse kid that was just absolutely atrocious. You haven't had to tap into any of these bums over the years. David Carr, none of these guys had to see the field because Eli Manning was an Iron Man. At least you got a guy here in Kyle Lauletta that if something were to go wrong, you got a guy that can step in. Maybe Davis Webb is the next guy in the air pair. Who knows? We'll see. This is a solid pickup here in the 4th round, 108th overall selection. Quarterback out of Richmond, Kyle Lauletta for me is. As we wrap up this Giants draft in the 5th round, 139th overall selection, defensive lineman out of Miami, R.J. McIntosh is the selection. So as I told you, Dave Gettleman is a guy that likes to get in and out. So here we are, done in the 5th round after 6 picks, 7 if you add in a supplemental draft pick. But nonetheless, I told you he also likes to build from within. Interior offensive line, interior defensive line, and then fan out. So here we are with another defensive lineman in this draft as he tries to rebuild this Giants defensive line. 6'5", 286 out of Miami stands R.J. McIntosh. Here's a guy that had a thyroid problem discovered at the Combine and was not allowed to participate at the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine. So not a lot of pre-draft numbers on R.J. McIntosh, although he was able to work out at the Miami Pro Day. A lot of the numbers that were there were skewed, and so I just decided to disregard them and just go with what I saw on tape. 34-inch arms, however. Career numbers, 5.5 sacks, 23 tackles for loss, 9 PBUs, 1 forced fumble, and 2 block kicks. So again, another one of these guys that does a little bit of everything and is a nuisance up front. Those 23 tackles for loss with only 5.5 sacks. Remember, in college football, it's a weird, funky stat, tackles for loss, because they include sacks in that tackle for loss stat. To have only 5.5 sacks but still have 23 tackles for loss means this guy is playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Similar to what you saw from B.J. Hill, another guy, only 9 sacks on his career, or in his career for B.J. Hill, but 25 tackles for loss tells you he's playing on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. And the same thing can be said for R.J. McIntosh. He's extremely disruptive around the line of scrimmage. We'll talk about that here in a second. But measurables, he's a long, active defender with 34-inch arms with a 6'5", 285-pound frame, essentially. He's long, and that's what they're going for up front. We talked about Lorenzo Carter. He's long. You talk about R.J. McIntosh. He's long. They're looking for long, active defenders to add to the mix. And so that's what you're getting here. And so they put those Tampa Bay Buccaneer draft picks that they gained from trading JPP to good usage in this draft. And they're replacing length with length. Okay, JPP was long and active. They're bringing long and active guys into the mix in New York. Athleticism, explosive off the snap. When you watch this guy off the snap, he is a blur. He's in the backfield instantaneously. With the snap, it seems like he's got a bead on the snap and he's jumping it, and the offensive linemen have no shot at blocking this guy a lot of times right off the snap. So from that standpoint, that's how he's getting these tackles for losses, is he's beating guys right off the snap. And it's a necessity because he's not the strongest in terms of his core when asked to just go up and defeat a block one-on-one, mano-a-mano. He's not the strongest at the point of attack. So he has to win with explosiveness off the snap, and he does a really good job of doing exactly that. Hand usage, he doesn't use his hands once he's at a stalemate well, but what he does do with his hands is create opportunities for him to get into the backfield and defeat blockers. He has a bevy of moves. This is why I'm excited about what this guy can bring to the table, because he's got a grab and snatch. Love when guys have a grab and snatch. He's got a swim move, and he's got a spin move, and every now and again he'll try to use a bull rush, although the core strength that is necessary for a bull rush isn't always there. When you get guys thinking about grab and snatch, swim, spin, quickness off the snap, when they're looking and they don't know what the hell is coming, and all of a sudden you get up under their pads and you start driving them with 34-inch arms, you can get a guy on skates and control that rep. So his hand usage isn't great, but he's got so many different moves in his move Rolodex that it gives him a chance to win with a little bit of the things that he's able to do. Awareness, he gets his hands up in the passing lane when he can't get to the quarterback. 9 PBUs tells you that right off the bat, a guy that will get his hands up. Again, much like B.J. Hill, another guy very aware, sees what's going on. I'm not getting there, put my hands up. B.J. Hill, 10 PBUs. R.J. McIntosh, 9 of them. So again, guys that are active up front, play on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, get their hands up. You see what Dave Gettleman is doing here, and also guys that offer you some length. So you see what he's trying to do here. Point of attack, physicality, as I mentioned before, not the strongest at the point of attack. I saw this guy uprooted and moved in some situations where he wasn't able to win with quickness. So that's something he's going to have to work on. Redirect, ability versus the run. Again, destructive off the snap when he wins with quickness. He has a very disruptive nature around the line of scrimmage. But if he does not win with quickness initially, he can be whitewashed on a play and absolutely evaporated and eviscerated on a snap and open up a gaping hole in the run game. So he's one of those guys that if he does not win with quickness, he could be in a world of trouble. Pass rushing ability, I think this guy has the potential to really, if there's one part of his game that I think has a chance to really grow exponentially at the next level, it's his ability to get to the quarterback. Because of all the things I just mentioned, he's got a swim move, he's got a spin move, he's got the grab and snatch, he's got the ability to bull rush, and he's got elite quickness. If he can put it together with a little bit of hand usage as well, I think his pass rushing ability could really be something that the Giants find value in some nickel situations where they reduce him inside, bring a guy like Lorenzo Carter up as a defensive end, and they look to get their best 4 pass rushers on the field. I think R.J. McIntosh might be one of those guys moving forward. So I think he could be a guy that could really benefit the Giants moving forward in the pass rushing department. Tackling ability is solid. Motor and endurance, I'll tell you this much. At the beginning of games, if you watch him versus Notre Dame, I thought he was – watch him against Notre Dame in 2017. I thought he was as dominant as he was ever in the first 2 quarters of that game. You watch him as the game – and yeah, it got out of hand. Obviously, that was a sickening game to watch over and over and over again. But as the game kind of wore on, and you'll see that with other games, as the game wears on, he becomes less and less of a factor. And I think it's a little bit of an endurance situation. And maybe that has something to do with the thyroid. I don't know. I don't want to sit here and draw conclusions and make stuff up. I'm no doctor, and I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. So I don't want to sit here and make up stuff. But at the beginning of games, this guy is lively. He's juiced up. He's making plays. He's knifing in the backfield. And as you get to the third and the fourth quarter, he's less. You might get a play here and there where he makes some noise, but he's less and less effective. He's less and less excited to get off the football. He's a guy that's not doing much of anything. I watched that against Virginia Tech. Wasn't all that impressed with him. He was early in the game. He's flying around. He's everywhere. Later in the game, he's really quiet. So that's something to pay attention to with R.J. McIntosh. But impact on the game, similar to B.J. Hill. He can function as a game wrecker up front, just knifing into the backfield and making plays on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. He can get his hands up in the passing lane. He's blocked kicks in his career. He's got a little bit of everything, but that thyroid situation is something that I don't know if it's going away. And he's a guy that just needs to get physically stronger at the point of attack in the run game. He's long and wiry. He's got a long frame. As you can see on the art there, he's a longer, wiry guy. His frame isn't one that looks like one that's going to stand up to physical play inside. So I think right now where his best benefit may be is to reduce inside as a pass rusher in obvious passing situations in a nickel package or a nickel set where they know they want to get their best pass rushers on the field. R.J. McIntosh may be able to do that. But then again, you want him on the field in some run situations because of this guy's ability to win with quickness. So I'm anxious to see how the Giants utilize him. He's good. Every single one of these draft picks are making this Giants roster. You can believe that. One thing about Dave Gettleman, when he drafts a guy, because he doesn't draft many, most times they're going to make the team. And you've got to know that because he's coming in and this is his first draft, he's cleaning the house and he's getting his guys onto this roster. So every one of these guys is making this Giants football team. Best believe that. So in the 5th round, 139th overall selection, a defensive lineman out of the U, R.J. McIntosh wraps up this Giants draft with So if you are looking for the individual scores for each player and a little synopsis of this Giants draft, check out the website LouieTeeNetwork.net, as the scores for each and every single player will be on the website when this video is uploaded. Also, if you can, support the channel, support the movement, support the brand by supporting me on Patreon, supporting me through PayPal, whatever is comfortable for you. Like the video, subscribe. All of those things are down in the description of this and every single video that I do. So if you can support, please do. And here is the final score for the inaugural draft of GM Dave Gettleman in New York. And it was a dandy. So that's going to do it for this Giants draft wrap-up. And it's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And check out the podcast, Louie Tee Network Podcast. It's on iTunes. It's on Stitcher. It's on Google Music Play. It's on this website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. Check it out. Enjoy it. Share it. Like it. Love it. I'm your man, Louie T. Remember, we're changing the game one video at a time. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.